Oklahoma. Oklahoma, the state you don't know about and probably have only recently remembered existed because I said the name. Oklahoma is a state. It's right next to Texas. I think it's in between Texas, Mississippi, and New Mexico. Don't quote me on that. I'm kind of sure. With that being said, Oklahoma sadly does exist, and now half of it belongs to Native Americans because recently the Supreme Court ruled in a landmark decision that in a 5-4 decision, actually, with one conservative judge breaking off to the rest of the liberal bloc, that half of Oklahoma, the eastern half of Oklahoma, belongs to Native Americans. Crazy, I know. That's a whole state. Supreme Court goes woke. Supreme Court panders to the radical left. So, you know, it is just those people. I can see the headlines now. Supreme Court goes woke, about to go broke. Cut the Supreme Court's funding. I don't know, dude. Like, let's get into it. The Supreme Court on Thursday ruled that that much of eastern Oklahoma falls within an Indian reservation, a decision that could reshape the criminal justice system by preventing state authorities from prosecuting offenses that involve Native Americans. In a 5-4 decision, potentially one of the most consequential legal victories for Native Americans in decades, could have far-reaching implications for people who live across what the court affirms as Indian country. This includes much of Tulsa, Oklahoma's second biggest city. So here's Tulsa. Here, mind you, Tulsa is where Trump had his last rally. Remember that his first rally in forever, where Herman Cain got COVID-19. Yeah, this is where it happened. It's like someone got his wish by. It's like someone got his wish on a monkey's paw. True, dude. And a finger. This just in. Supreme Court rules that half of Oklahoma belongs to Native Americans. And a finger curls on the monkey's paw. You know, that type thing. Yeah, that's true. This ruling only went through because someone who was arrested for committing sexual assault on a 4-year-old girl took his case all the way to the Supreme Court because he claimed that where he sexually assaulted that girl was actually belonged to the Native Americans and did not fall within Oklahoma's jurisdiction, so he could not be charged by Oklahoma. Now, this does not mean that he gets to walk. Because of this ruling. Okay, let's just make that clear. All he ruled was that his case should have been handled by federal prosecutors, not local state prosecutors. Okay, that's it. This is not overturn his ruling. I'm pretty sure he may have another court case, but he will 100% lose. This just claimed that this much of Oklahoma is now Native American territory. The case was steeped in the United States government's long history of brutal removals and broken treaties with indigenous tribes, and grappled with whether the lands of the Muscogee Creek Nation had remained a reservation after Oklahoma became a state. The decision puts in doubt hundreds of state convictions of Native Americans that could change the handling of prosecutors across the vast swath of the state. Justice Neil Gorsuch, a Westerner who has sided with the tribes in previous cases, has joined the court's more liberal members to form the majority that said that Congress has granted the Creek a reservation and that the United States needs to abide by its promises. Today, we are asked whether the land of these treaties promised remains an Indian reservation. And for the purposes of the federal criminal law, Gorsuch wrote in the majority opinion. He even wrote the majority opinion, so he was very adamant about this. I'm quite sure that Gorsuch has like I said here, Gorsuch has a pretty big history with siding on indigenous rights. So this isn't out of the ballpark, but it's pretty crazy to see one of the conservatives break for this one. Because Congress has not said otherwise, we hold the government to its word. Now, this is one of the really important things with this. Tucker Carlson's friend. I mean, thank you for the follow. I appreciate it, bud. This is one of the important things about this ruling, okay? There was nothing about this ruling that said that it should go in the other way. There's no reason why any court justice looking at this case would side on the side of that most of the conservatives did, or at least for the other side of the conservatives did. Oklahoma goes broke. That's true. Supreme Court goes woke. Oklahoma goes broke. There's no reason for the other four Supreme Court conservative justices to side on that side. There's no legal reading of anything that goes on here that would make it so that this would be a justified ruling when it comes to the law. Like a reasonable interpretation of the law would never side with what the conservative justices said. And it shows in the dissenting opinion, because in the dissenting opinion for the conservative justices, they do not bring up how this is still a promise on the books. There are lots and lots of promises on the books that our government made that they did not keep. Where Mount Rushmore is right now was land that we took from Native Americans, said they could have it, and then took it back again. You know, the Supreme Court is just now affirming that promises made means promises kept. Our country has a long history of making promises with Native Americans and instantly going back on them whenever we deem those promises to be inconvenient to us. Now, if Congress wants to go back and say that, hey, we're actually voiding this treaty, fuck off, that's life. But right now, the court is just saying that if you make a promise, you have to keep to it. And there's nothing in the law that gives any of the other judges any credence to say that this is not just how this should work. This is just how this works. If you're conservative, if you live in Oklahoma and you want to get mad at it, sorry, bud. Sorry to bust your bubble, but the government made a promise and now they have to keep it. They made their bed and now they have to lie in it, okay? That's just how it works. And this is probably going to go on and see a lot more trouble for us. We're just keeping up with the trouble we made for ourselves in history. No one actually lives there. Well, actually, I think a decent amount of people live there. I think about 1 million people live there, actually. The Muskegee tribe that lives there said that they have no plans to really change what's going on so far. I think what they just want to do is like protect the environment, which, I mean, whatever. I don't really care too much about it. But what really saddens me about this court case, honestly, is where a lot of the conservative judges fell. Because in their dissenting opinion, they didn't bring up how this is not the correct interpretation for the law. They brought up that it's just hard now. What they did was they just said that this law is the price to pay for this treaty is just too high, so we shouldn't honor it. And Gorsuch said, we have a long history of going back on promises, not keeping them because we feel like the price is too high, and then just ignoring the rights that we legally gave to these Native Americans. And the buck stops here. It stops here. And so we have to figure out what to do now. We have to come to grips with the problems that we've created for ourselves in this time. And now I know a lot of the people who are living now who are making laws now had nothing to do with this, but it's too late. We have to deal with it. It's on our plate. The buck stops here. And I hope at least that this is the future of really taking accountability for what we've done to Native Americans and the reservations that we said we were going to give to them.